Hey, what's going on guys? Arekkz here. Welcome back to another video for Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and today I want to talk about some more information that has been cropping up over the past few weeks in various different interviews, also some stuff from the official PlayStation magazine. If you're excited for this game, it sounds like it is shaping up to be a pretty spectacular experience. I'm already incredibly excited for it. I've said before, absolutely love anything to do with Vikings, so this is already shaping up to be one of my most anticipated games this year, and that's saying a lot because there's a lot of cool games coming out this year. But anyway, with that being said, if you guys do enjoy this video, let me know in the comments down below what you think of the stuff I discuss, and also if you do want to stay up to date on all things Valhalla, make sure you turn on those notifications because I'm going to be covering this extensively as we get closer to launch, so definitely make sure you don't miss it. But starting off at number one, let's talk about unique loot. If you guys have played some of the previous Assassin's Creed games, specifically Origins or Odyssey, then you'll know that they obviously introduced more RPG mechanics, the ability to kind of get different loot items, and of course it was an interesting change of direction for Assassin's Creed. I appreciate some people liked their system, some people didn't, but with a game like that, with the ability to get so many different varied loot pieces, sometimes it can be a little bit daunting. However, they did say specifically in the PlayStation magazine that in Valhalla they're changing that slightly. There is still loot to get, however this time around every single piece of gear is going to be unique in game, and it can also be upgraded extensively so that when you find a piece of gear and you're excited about it, you can celebrate it by upgrading it and bringing it with you for quite a long time. They said, and I quote, "It can be viable for quite some time, so it's quite different to the approach we took for previous games." It's also said that the loot box system that featured in Origins and Odyssey appears to be gone. Instead, the new unique weapons and gear are instead earned and valued, and most of them, again, as mentioned, can be used throughout the game, which honestly I think is really, really cool. I mean, I play my fair share of loot-based games. I'm no stranger to grinding pieces of gear for minute stat changes to try and get the best piece of gear you possibly can. However, in a game like this, where I personally feel like the combat and the story should shine slightly more so, I personally am more excited about the idea of a finite number of unique items as opposed to a potentially limitless amount of minutely different pieces of gear. Anyway, that is one thing to look forward to. So yeah, if you find something and you like it and you get it early game, don't just think, oh no, this is going to be useless in like 2 levels time. You can keep it, you can upgrade it, and you can bring it with you. Moving on from there to number 2 to speak about customization, specifically beards. I mean, not just beards, but if you guys know me, I've got a big beard. I like beards in video games. This is always something I get excited about, and part of Assassin's Creed games, obviously in the past, they've typically either provided you with a single protagonist with a predetermined gender or a choice between male and female in some of the more recent ones. However, beyond that point, obviously you've got some gear choices and whatnot, but largely speaking, you are fixed. Meanwhile in Valhalla, while yes, again, you can play as either male or female, both of whom are Eivor, this time around they've said that you'll actually have quite a lot of options for the way that you look, being able to change your styles, your clothing, your tattoos, things like that. Ashraf Ismail said in an interview that there are quite an amount, or quite a kind of a various amount of hairstyles, beards and styles with different colours, and you can also sport different tattoos or cover yourself with war paint. And as for the gear, they're broken into gear pieces that separate bits that can all be applied to your character. For example, a hood is just one piece among many. So, despite the fact that you are of course playing as a fixed character, it does seem like the kind of look and sort of feel for that character isn't set in stone. Obviously on top of that, we know that we'll also have the ability to create our own raiders, which will also be part of the other aspects of the game, but knowing that there's also a little bit of kind of customization for the main character is pretty exciting. I definitely basically want a massive beard, as minimal hair as possible, so that I can look either like me or look like Ragnar Lothbrok from Vikings. Moving on from there to talk about number 3, this one is about Parkour Improvements. Again, in an interview with Ashraf Ismail, he said that while he didn't detail the system specifically, he did indicate that there will be some twists and some kind of changes to the parkour system this time around. He said, of course, you know, much like you would expect, you can still run on the ground and do whatever you need to do on the ground in combat, but if you do decide to go up higher, you're going to immediately see the value, see the advantage that you have, so a lot of effort has been going into the parkour system from that perspective. Again, it's unclear right now whether there are any specific new mechanics that will come into parkour, but he did say that the exploration this time around will feel meaningful both from a narrative and a gameplay point of view. He also said that this is a meticulous building to make sure that they can achieve it to the scale of the world that we have. We have some really incredible locations that shine when you decide to be, let's say, the predator at the top, or even some navigational puzzles. That bit sounds really interesting. I really hope there are like kind of jumping parkour puzzles. I love those kind of things, so yes, please, more of that. Moving on from there to number 4, more about the hidden blade. Obviously, we know that in Valhalla you will have the hidden blade, although it's not hidden because obviously the way that the Vikings are, they're very much kind of proud when they're in combat. They don't like to hide their weapons and be sneaky, so it is definitely on display. However, more importantly, of course, Assassin's Creed Origins lent more into action, and obviously Vikings are still very much like aggressors in battle. They're very much kind of like running headlong into battle. However, they did say that in Valhalla, they are going to be bringing more depth into stealth. The hidden blade will, and I quote, once again make it lethal enough to regularly pull off one-hit kills. They said that social stealth is making a comeback, meaning that you can of course blend into crowds to avoid detection, a feature that we actually haven't seen since Assassin's Creed Syndicate. They said you'll also have a hood and a cloak that can manually be put on and off. And they said it's not purely cosmetic either, it will actually have effects on gameplay, particularly when it comes to enemy detection. And if you need to distract enemies, your trusty Raven companion can also swoop in and help you so that you can then pass them by quietly. So it seems like while yes, you might not necessarily associate Vikings with stealth in the traditional sense, they are of course putting a bigger focus on your ability to stealthily kind of work your way around encounters, maybe not necessarily sneaking on rooftops, but at least in a way that kind of makes sense for the narrative. There was also a quick mention, kind of a passing mention, in a US Gamer interview, again from Ismail, who said that there will be a new feigning death mechanic. They didn't actually give you any more details on that, so make of that what you will, but I guess that kind of implies that maybe sometimes in battles it can make it look like you're almost down and out, kind of like we saw in that sort of cinematic trailer where it looked like he was almost finished, and then he used the not so hidden blade to stab the enemy in the eye. Next up on the list, in number 5, we have weapon synergy. So again, I mentioned earlier, unique items and whatnot, but we also know that there is the ability to dual wield in this game, and that is going to be incredibly important. Again, in another interview, Ismail said that he wanted to give some insight into the effort being put into polishing combat, and then your approach for the way that dual wielding weapons is going to work. Interestingly, it also sounds like there's an ability to wield a two-handed weapon in one hand, which again, in most games, you obviously wouldn't necessarily do that, but given that Vikings are these strong, aggressive guys in battle, I can very much picture being able to kind of grab a hefty claymore that you would normally wield with two hands and just pick it up with one hand and just like roar your way into battle. That sounds awesome. But he then went on to say that since Vikings are brutal warriors, nailing combat was of course important. Bringing a steady and satisfying sense of impact for each of the swings of a sword or an axe, for example, was incredibly important to the game's conceptualization. But they then went on to say that in terms of customizing the way you play, one of the areas they really wanted to push is the idea of dual wielding, that you can combine any two combinations of weapons you want. Some weapons even have synergies with one another, so there's a lot of nitty-gritty crafting if you wish to go down that road. A lot of effort has gone into the dual wielding system, and if you want to dual wield two shields, you can also do that too. So the idea that, you might combine, I don't know, like an axe and a sword and find that it has a really cool synergy. Maybe that'll even tie into some of the unique items. That would be really cool if you had like a particular, say, weapon gear set, so to speak, where if you paired like, I don't know, I'm gonna make this up, but Thor's hammer with, I don't know, Odin's axe or something, and you wield them together, that could be pretty awesome. But anyway, synergy, dual wielding, lots of combat options. Moving on from there to number 6, a note on progression. So again, if you guys played Origins or Odyssey, then you'll of course know that, there was a bigger focus on grinding XP and whatnot. And while, some players liked it, some players didn't so much. They did say specifically in an interview that they reflected a lot since Origins on progression specifically and what that means for the player. Ismail again said that they have a new take this time around on progression in this game, and they have more of a concept of power that is gained instead through, say, player gaining skills. He said that the developers are trying to avoid any kind of big progression walls or anything that would keep the players from accessing the kind of parts of the games that they're interested in. He specifically said that he didn't want people to hit a progression spike that would then keep them from experiencing the narrative content. In other words, he wants players to be able to finish the game's main story without feeling the need that you have to just suddenly stop what you're doing and go off and grind a bajillion side quests just to be the right level. So while yes, there are still RPG mechanics in this game, while there are still kind of those sort of things that you've been familiar with in the more recent Assassin's Creed titles, it's not going to be as grindy and it should make for a much more fluid experience. After that, in number 7, a quick note on God Battles. This one actually came from a Kotaku article. Rather interestingly, before Valhalla was announced, they actually had a quick post, or they received a tip from somebody that they didn't know, and it told them in that tip that Assassin's Creed would be called Valhalla. They said that it would involve a Viking invasion of England. They said that players could build a settlement, they could take over territory, dual wield weapons, and they also said that players would be able to create a character that they could then raid other players' games with. They had no proof to share, but obviously if you then follow that with the fact that when Valhalla was announced, all of those things they said were true, it goes to add some credibility to that tip. Rather interestingly, there was one additional detail in that tip that hasn't currently been confirmed, but that said that players would also be able to fight gods from Norse mythology in dream-like sequences. Now, obviously, we've seen similar things like that before. In Origins, there was of course the dream sequence where you fought the giant snake, and while Ismail himself said that he doesn't talk about rumours, they have said specifically that they want to keep the Valhalla experience much more grounded, much more realistic, so to speak, but that doesn't mean to say that something like this can't happen. While it's obviously not necessarily going to happen in the actual world, you won't suddenly be raiding England or be in part of Norway and then suddenly expect Thor to drop out the sky, but similarly, the way that it could be delivered in a dream sequence would make much more sense. The fact that you may have gone into battle, rested for the night, and then suddenly as you're sleeping, you have this imaginary battle with like a Norse god. That would be a definite way they could integrate that into the game, provide some pretty cool and exciting battles without it necessarily having to become unrealistic, if you see what I mean. So I do genuinely hope we go down that route. If that tip is to be believed, then it seems like it's something they'll confirm at a later date. But either way, especially in a game with Vikings and Norse mythology, there are definitely plenty of awesome gods that I would love to do battle with. And then finally, in number 8, we have the potential release date. Again, coming from one of those early listings on Amazon. There was an Italian listing for the gold edition of the game, which listed the release date as October the 15th. This again was on Amazon. It also coincides with the fact that there was the Assassin's Creed Valhalla art book, which is also said to be launching on that same date. But rather interestingly, it's probably more likely that it will be the 16th, purely because Assassin's Creed games historically, or at least the kind of most recent ones, have all launched on a Friday. October the 15th is a Thursday, but if you look at the thing that Ubisoft have been doing recently, a lot of the recent games have had, say, like if you buy the premium edition or the gold edition, you get, say, a period of early access. Division allowed, say, 3 days of early access. Some other games, maybe less so. But it may well be that the 15th is for the gold edition, so you get a day of early access to the game, and then 16th is the actual release date. Obviously, for all of this stuff, until Ubisoft confirm it, take it with a pinch of salt, but that seems like a pretty kind of likely window. It seems like we'll of course be getting it on current generation consoles first, and then next generation a little bit later. We know of course for the Xbox it supports smart delivery, so if you do buy it on Xbox One, then when Series X launches you'll be able to jump over there and move your save, move everything and carry on your experience, so there is definitely still that to look forward to. But for the time being, that's a quick update on some of the stuff that we've learned more recently about Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Again, if you guys have any questions, by all means let me know in the comments down below, and of course be sure to keep it locked for plenty more. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed that video. Don't forget, if you haven't already done so, you can join the Arekkz Gaming Discord. We've got an awesome community over there with so many different channels for you to chat loads of different topics and different games. I'm in there, the team's in there if you guys want to chat with us, find people to play with. It's just in general a great place to be. And of course, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to turn on those notifications so you don't miss any of our future uploads.